Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News channel. My name is Bongikwala, your host for today's show, standing in for Peter Ndoro, who is currently in Zimbabwe covering the upcoming elections there. We will touch base with Peter a little later on the show. On that note, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. So, here's what you can look forward to on today's show. We'll take a look at the construction of the SABC editorial policy, which has public hearings coming to an end on the 31st of July, which is this coming Tuesday. As usual, we will take a look at the Sunday newspapers, and lastly, we will be crossing to Sophie Mkwena and Peter Ndoro, who will be giving us an overview of what the papers in Zimbabwe have been saying leading to tomorrow's elections. But of course, let's look at the newspapers right now. The Sunday Times is leading with a story about a wealthy lawyer and his son who fled South Africa after allegedly fleecing the road accident fund victims out of millions of rands and are living a life of luxury in Australia. The City Press front page carries a story that claims a Treasury report on its ongoing investigations into the state capture reveals that the extent to which the Gupta family's lieutenants bent over backwards to help them loot Transnet and Eskom. The Sunday Independent today leads with a story about Higher Education Minister Naledi Pandor ordering an investigation into National Student Financial Aid Scheme as the government's funding model of university and college students teeters on the brink. The KZN Sunday Tribune is carrying a story about how a suspect linked to the incendiary bomb devices found in Durban was taken in for questioning this week. The Weekend Argus carries a story about Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille. An offer has been made for her to move to the Western Cape Provincial Legislature to take up a vacant position created after the exit of Leonard Max. The Weekend Argus says it has learned from highly placed sources that the offer was made to de Lille as part of the agreement raised this week, which led to the withdrawal of the motion of no confidence against it by the DA caucus in the city of Cape Town. Swaziland's Sunday Observer leads with a story about harrowing accident involving election officers. The article further states that a Nissan sedan ferrying 6 people was rammed from behind by a combi transporting polling officers. 2 people died on impact and 4 have been admitted at hospitals. Nigeria's Daily Trust runs with a story about the 2019 general elections. With barely 200 days to next year's elections, the political chessboard is replete with twists and turns, even as the number of aspirants jostling for various elective positions is increasing by the day. The Daily Trust on Sunday reveals that no fewer than 46 politicians have indicated their intentions to throw their hats in the presidential ring to slug it out with incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari. So those are just some of the top stories that we are carrying today. And of course, our guest this morning, we are pleased to welcome Thandi Smith, Media Monitoring Africa Head of Policy Program, and Tshamano Makhadi, who is a broadcast specialist lecturer at TUT. So yeah, let's get talking. Good morning to both of you. Let me start with you. Sir, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you very much indeed, Bongi, and good morning to the viewers.
Thandi, good morning to you as well.
Hi, good morning.
All right, let's get talking. And to you at home as well, you can just stay tuned and let's see what the Sunday newspapers are carrying today. So what are we going to start with? Let me start with you. Let's look at the top stories that you want to cover today.
Well, the story that catch my attention is on the Sunday Independent, the front page, NFSAS disaster looms. So here we're talking about, most of students that are obviously have been waiting, especially for Wednesday, the 1st of August, with much anticipation to start applying for NFSAS, especially with the academic year 2019. It appears the minister has decided to put this on hold, suggesting that there are a number of issues that still needs to be dealt with. So I guess it's a call for concern, especially when you are looking at a country with most of students that come from really disadvantaged background.
And what are the challenges there, Tshamano?
The challenges have more to do with administration, as it is reported here. There's still a huge backlog when it comes to some of the applications for the academic year 2018. It appears NFSAS has not been able to resolve some of the issues. So going into 2019, it appears it's still going to be a serious challenge. But I mean, students are more worried probably than any one of us.
Yeah, and the minister raises the issues of incompetence and administrative bungling as some of the issues that are creating those problems there.
Yeah, of course, as it is reported here, the minister has been in talks with NFSAS since April this year, but it appears since then none of the issues that have been raised have actually been dealt with the much needed attention that it deserves.
And what's the impact of this on higher education? I mean, and the output thereof, because this is the country that is grappling with unemployment, particularly of young people, particularly of graduates as well. And you have a problem like this, shortage of money, or the money is there, but it's just the incompetence that is there.
No, you're quite right.
Dispersing that money.
I mean, a country with a population of 57 million, 60% of that is made up of our youth. Yes, of course. I mean, it's a call for concern, more for so because most of these young people rely on funding, especially from NFSAS. Promises were made to say, come one, come all, come 2018, you're going to have free education. But with stories like this starting to surface, obviously it affects young people in particular. You're talking about issues of unemployment in their great numbers. Yes, young people are the most affected. Graduates are affected. Some of them are sitting with certificates, but they're sitting without jobs.
Yeah, and another issue as we wrap up this particular story is the issue of technological capacity. I mean, we're moving into the into the fourth industrial revolution, and here's an institution that is still challenged when it comes to technology. We should do better.
Sure. No, we should do better. I mean, South Africa should be actually pulling up its socks, especially if you're talking about NFSAS. Given the number of students that need assistance, you're right to mention that. I mean, everyone is talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Technology is the future. Everything is digital. So I would expect that NFSAS to be able to deal with some of these issues. They try as much as possible to deal with these things. Obviously, I mean, if you're just gonna rely on a manual way of capturing data, surely you're not going to succeed, especially when you are talking about a number of students that need assistance.
Okay, so let me bring in thanks. Let me bring in then Thandi Smith is with Media Monitoring Africa. She's the head of a policy program there. So your top story today is that of looting, the Guptas, Treasury, Transnet, Eskom, Brian Molefe, Ben Gubane, you name them.
Exactly, you name them. And the problem is, what really concerns me is that this is just the start.
Yeah.
You know, this is, we're dealing with the state capture inquiry at the moment, that's just kicked off. And we're already seeing these unbelievable stories coming through. But, you know, going through the story, it's interesting. I think we've been so traumatized over the last couple of years with all of these things coming out of the state capture and all of these, corrupt deals and ongoing issues, and I think people are getting a bit tedious of this stuff. But what really struck me was I don't know how to relate to a lot of what happens in these stories. I mean, we're talking about a paragraph here. It says, the report sheds further light on alleged wrongdoing regarding Transnet's 1,064 locomotives tender, which ballooned from 38.6 billion to 54 billion rand, and which saw the Guptas and their lieutenants score more than 5 billion in kickbacks. I mean, how does the ordinary person relate to that amount of money? You can't, it's difficult to try and picture, you know, what that actually looks like. And I think what we need to be doing more as media is explaining why this affects and how this affects the ordinary citizens.
So what's new there? I mean, we've known about these things, but it would appear that Treasury has released this as a new angle to this story.
Like you said, we've known about this stuff, but what I think is reassuring is that we actually know about this stuff. I mean, I think that's a positive on this, and that Treasury is reporting on these things and has now dropped this bomb, but we at least know, and that's part of our interest in the inquiry as well, is making these documents available and having this information and having these reports available to the public for the media to interrogate. You know, if there's anything new, it's just that I think we're digging deeper into the corrupt deals, and we're digging deeper into finding out what's actually been going on with these what's been termed state capture, and it's depressing.
Yeah, and the terms of reference of the inquiries seems to be, you know, shifting every day. It would appear that you know, there are others now who wanted certain things added there, and of course we know what that means. It means it needs to be extended. It could go for 2-3 years before we actually get to know what happened.
Yeah, that is a big issue, and we've even been involved as an organization in, you know, some aspects of those terms of reference and making information available to the public. But I think there are two approaches to that issue, and the one is you need terms of reference that is, you know, that will really benefit the inquiry. The inquiry is going to take a huge amount of taxpayers' money, and, you know, the public need to hold the inquiry accountable to the kind of information that we need to get out. And because of that, you have to have a really good, thorough terms of reference that captures everything that you need. And so if it needs to be postponed, or if that needs to be drawn out to get to that state of terms of reference, then that's sort of what needs to happen. But it does there is an urgency to this issue.
Okay. My two guests here, Thandi Smith, Media Monitoring Africa's Head of Policy Program, and Tshamano Makhadi, who is a broadcast specialist lecturer at TUT. So we will come back then and talk about the SABC editorial policy public hearing. They will come to an end on the 31st of July. This is on Tuesday. So let's shed some light then on this particular story, but that is coming up next.
News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day and breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories that impact your lives. We are on the ball with all economic stories. Our bureaus around the globe are ready to connect you to events as and when they happen. So join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
When I got married to my wife, we agreed on one thing, that we will not have every night. 3 times a week we said
The lava was coming down and seeping through the plots of land.
Kim Jong-un, he really has been open and very honorable.
We're probably looking at yet another case of North Korea getting a timeout and getting a pass.
SABC announced last year that it would be reviewing its 2004 editorial policies. The public broadcaster has been conducting SABC Editorial Policy Review Roadshow in various provinces in the country. This new review process is aimed at ensuring that a proper consultation process takes place with the public and the various stakeholders of the SABC, and that the final policies which emanates are in line with Section 6 of the Broadcasting Act of number 4, or Act number 4 of 1999 rather. The general public has until the 31st of July to raise their concerns about the SABC policy then. So let's get to talk about this then. The current editorial policy was last reviewed in 2004. So this needed to happen at some point. Let me start with you, Thandi.
So there's a lot going on with the editorial policies at the moment, and a lot that's actually quite negative about the policies. One of the biggest issues that we're dealing with at the moment is the fact that the 2004 policies are 80% identical to what the document that we're seeing now. It's unbelievable that it's taken this long to get a document that is pretty much the same kind of information, the same policies, the same mandates as we saw in the 2005 documents. That's the one big issue. The other one is that we barely see anything detailing approaches to dealing with social media and digital and online. That is, I mean, we mentioned the fact a little bit earlier that we're dealing with what's termed the fourth industrial revolution, and that the whole country is going digital, and we need to be taking these approaches to really, you know, I suppose, merging with your digital realities, but when it's not, you know, the forefront of your public broadcasters' editorial policies, no, that's a big problem. The other one is that, you know, the public hearings are taking place at the moment. You have the Gauteng taking place on the 31st. Submissions are due on the 1st of August. There have been, it's shockingly short time to make submissions on these. Although, I mean, the fact that they pretty much identical to the 2004 makes it a bit easier, because we can just take our submissions that we, you know, that we did beforehand and tweak a little bit and resubmit those, because we're dealing with the same issues that we saw with the 2004 policies, which is a problem.
All right. So and then Tshamano, then what is at the heart of this? What is the SABC trying to achieve? What is it trying to arrive at with these reviews?
Yeah, I guess most importantly, obviously, it's to get to a point where you come up with a policy that I think it allows the SABC to be free also from any political interference, which I think has been a subject of a greater concern for many years. But of course, I mean, it will be worrying. As Thandi has alluded to, I mean, going through the document, you sort of get the sense that nothing much has changed. But an important fact which I think also needs, you know, attention. We're talking about fourth industrial revolution. We're talking technology. As a public broadcaster, I think there's much greater need to start thinking very seriously about technology. Things have to change in terms of, you know, operation and all of that. But also the other thing that I find also very interesting, also, you know, just following some of the public debates, people are talking about content, for example. It cannot be that when you have and I'm simply giving an example here, Auckland Park, and you find that story centers around, you know, politics, and everything is done in the big cities like Johannesburg, you know, your Pretoria and so forth. We need to begin to see stories that reflect even what is happening in our rural areas, and these are issues that are raised by people themselves when it comes to content. I mean, when you think of an institution with bureaus across all nine provinces, so it is therefore important that those bureaus are used to the advantage of the national broadcaster in terms of storytelling.
Right. Staying with the content, some of the issues that have been coming up are the issues of cultural dominance, for instance, religious dominance, and diversity as well. Those are some of the issues that people have been raising, and they're concerned that certain religions get prominence over others, for instance, particularly the indigenous traditional religion.
Of course, there has to be balance, Bongi. There has to be balance, more for so because you're talking about a national broadcaster. So you've got to be looking at all these, religions, and not really give a certain group of people, more airtime, but there has to be a balance in terms of content, in terms of how we tell those stories. And I think those people that are raising those concerns, they, in my view, I think they have a point.
Thandi, the image of the SABC, the credibility has been questioned over the past while, over the past 10 years or so. Do you think these hearings, this entire review exercise will help the SABC reclaim its glory? Because it is a big institution and it plays a critical role in our democracy.
It plays an absolutely critical role in our democracy, and especially during this time where we're in the lead up to our own 2019 national elections. I can't stress the importance of the role of the public broadcaster. And yes, over the last couple of years there have been massive issues with the credibility of the organization. I mean, you can't begin to go through the different examples of what we've seen: political interference, editorial interference, that sort of thing. And it also comes at a time where SABC is dealing with its own internal editorial inquiry into editorial interference and sexual harassment issues. But it's good that the policies are being reviewed and that this is happening. Let me not put any doubt in that. It's a really positive thing, and we have seen a lot of good measures being put in place with trying to get things back on track at the SABC. But it's almost like the minute you start making really good progress, it takes like 10 steps back. And we were really hopeful that the editorial policies would be a great document that deals with all these issues, that deals with technology, deals with online and digital, and we're just not seeing that. But it's not to say that it's not a good step in re-harnessing the trust of the public.
And one of the issues that has been coming up across the hearings is the quality and the skill of SABC, some of the SABC employees. I mean, how they deliver content and so on and so on. And it talks to training, I guess, and that's something that needs to happen quite urgently.
Yeah. I mean, I think the last couple of years have seen big issues with governance, with management, with HR issues at the SABC. And that, as much as we have seen the SABC really perform day to day, which has been, a very positive thing, even though you're dealing with all those high-level, very terrible issues, you still switch on the TV every day and you still get your news, you still get your programming. That's to be commended. It's a positive thing. But there are big issues that need to be dealt with, like training, finances. Finances is a whole nother problem that also needs to be dealt with. But again, I think that aside from the issues that we're seeing and the problems cropping up, I think that we're still in a much more positive, transparent place than we were 2 years ago.
And Tshamano, this is a democratic process, and you would expect young people to be part of it. But when we were watching these hearings, we didn't quite see a lot of young people coming forward and raising issues that concern them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Quite frankly, young people, I think they need to participate more, but are they informed? Do they know about these things? So again, I mean, I think it's also about how you communicate some of these things. So I would expect that across all, let's say, SABC platforms, you sort of run a campaign where young people in particular are encouraged to to participate. But just a brief point that I also wanted to make. Yes, of course, I mean, with all the things that people might have been complaining about and all of that, one can confidently say over the last, I would say, a few months, we have begun to see a positive sign, something that gives you some kind of confidence to say the SABC is moving towards a right direction. Yes, it's going to take a bit of time to gain the confidence of ordinary people, but I sincerely think that so far we are beginning to see the SABC, our SABC, the SABC that belongs to everybody that we all would like to see.
Tshamano Makhadi and Thandi Smith are my guests today. And then it's a big week in Zimbabwe, the week that starts tomorrow, so we'll be crossing over to Zimbabwe coming up shortly.
Clientele funeral plans.
It's your final gift of love.
I chose the clientele funeral plan because it's affordable and suits my budget.
I chose clientele because they are an original. They've been around for a long time, and I know within my family are in good hands.
I'm a farmer and I'm a businessman, and I know a good deal when I see one. Clientele is a good deal.
Clientele is the name I trust.
SMS plan to 31043 and we'll call you back.
News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day and breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories that impact your life. We are on the ball with all economic stories. Our bureaus around the globe are ready to connect you to events as and when they happen. So join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
How safe is social media? 25 years into democracy and we're still battling with apartheid. Are we really the so-called rainbow nation?
If you can go there, they will beat us something or chase us away or kill you.
Not forgetting the dangers of substance abuse.
When we brought those things and came to us, it was looking so tasty with crushed lemons and strawberry and colorful straws.
Importance of education for all. Is the judiciary and government failing the people of South Africa? These are some of our stories on Cutting Edge. Catch it every Sunday at 5:30.
Welcome back. You're watching Media Monitor. Let's now take a look at what the trending stories were on social media this past week. This insert was compiled by SABC Digital News.
Hashtag BRICS Summit kicked off the week at the top of South Africa's trending topics on social media. On Wednesday, the 10th BRICS Summit kicked off at the Sandton Convention Center. People on social media shared negative sentiments about China. Some criticized the 33.4 billion rand loan Eskom received from the China Development Bank. Hashtag Zim Elections 2018 also trended this week ahead of the national elections on Monday. This is the most anticipated elections for Zimbabwe since independence in 1980. It is the final countdown to the country's landmark elections, the first without Robert Mugabe. Social media users are expressing different views. Women making news. The scheduled motion of no confidence motion against Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille has been withdrawn. it was due to be bought by the DA caucus during Thursday's council meeting. TV personality Shashi Naidu was denied entry into Israel as she tried to enter the country to learn about occupied territories. Some people have welcomed this move. And finally, pop star Demi Lovato was rushed to a Los Angeles hospital on Tuesday after an apparent drug overdose but remained in stable condition. The musician has received messages of support on Twitter, some wishing her a speedy recovery.
And those are big stories this past week. And Thandi, let me start with you. BRICS was a massive affair.
It really was, and I think that what we saw was quite a high-level reporting on what was going on at BRICS. I think that it's ordinary people sort of see BRICS as, you know, it's also quite a foreign concept, and I do think that we can go far more into unpacking the issues and the agreements and the relations a lot better. I think that we sort of obsessed with your celebrity politician, and it was and that's, I think, quite common. We often tend to react like that. But it also links to the issues that we see with the China deals and our president, you know, securing the funding and securing these deals and securing these loans. And again, you know, I've seen some questions come up, but we're not really dealing with it. And questions around, well, what terms and conditions are coming with these loans? What terms and conditions come with various agreements that get made during the BRICS summit? So we're hearing what's going on, but it's so typical of our media to you know, have this tendency of events-based reporting. So you report quickly on, you know, the juicy story and the celebrity politician and the big deals that we're now having funding secured. But what does it mean? How does it impact our everyday lives? And what can we expect? How do we hold these agreements and deals accountable?
I think that needs to be unpacked even further. Then, Tshamano, for me, I think the media completely missed this one. It was just a little story there where Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, and Vladimir Putin met here in South Africa. And one of the things that they are discussing is their common strategy towards Syria, for instance. And that could have been brokered here in South Africa. I think we missed that one quite completely.
No, definitely, without doubt. I think most people missed it. They were simply just focusing on the forum with big excitement around, you know, the fact that you have all BRICS nation meeting in South Africa. And not only that, of course, I mean, there were also other heads of state, but I think that particular story for me was an important one. There are things that happens on the sideline of a summit or a forum, and again, I mean, it's just a matter of really understanding the issues, right? It's really about understanding the issues, and I don't think that story was given the prominence that it actually you know, deserved. But you've touched on a few other things, Thandi. I think the issue around the nuclear deal as well. What does it mean to ordinary people? So I think it's also important to sort of try and assist in terms of storytelling. If President Cyril Ramaphosa says, well, we cannot afford this deal for now, what does that mean? Help ordinary people understand what that really means. I
want us to quickly run to Cape Town, the city of Cape Town and Western Cape. It would appear that the DA and the Patricia de Lille are finding each other finally, because she could be moved to the provincial legislature. I don't think she's going to like that very much, but she has no choice really. She's been fighting the DA for a while now, and 2019 is just around the corner.
I mean, 2019 is just around the corner, and I don't think the DA have much time to waste, especially with things that have been creeping in, like the Delil, saga. But it will be interesting to just wait and see what happens. Obviously, it's been going on for quite some time. They've been taking each other to court and all of that. But it will be interesting, really, to see what happens with this.
And we'll be crossing to Peter Ndoro just now in Sofumkwena in Zimbabwe. It's a big week for Zimbabwe.
It's a massive week for Zimbabwe, and I think what's really interesting is I hope we're going to get into the discussion about media platforms, what's been going on with your traditional media versus your online media. I think there's some really excitable, interesting issues to unpack with misinformation and dodgy news. But I think everyone in the SADC region should be really focused and watching. I think it's
and how the media is going to be covering the elections and the build up to that as well. All right, okay, let's leave that for now, stories that were trending this past week, but shortly we'll be going to Peter Ndoro in Zimbabwe.
The bank is going down.
I'm angry. 2017 financial statement of BBS did not present an accurate account of the mutual bank financial position. We are not happy at all.
We had a trust on these banks.
That's about 500,000.
Oh, that trust is gone. It's gone.
Young people make up the majority of the people in this country. So why is it that the job market is filled with old people?
We also need someone who can help us with everything. Job opportunities are things that could do.
High levels of violent behavior in our schools, learners physically attacking other learners, learners physically attacking teachers, and teachers attacking learners.
The laws that are governing health today will all have to be amended and be changed. Nothing is going to stay the way it is now.
Welcome back. We now cross to Zimbabwe, where Peter Ndoro will be speaking to SABC foreign editor Sophie Mkwena and Dr. Pedzisai Ruhanya, a media analyst, about the much anticipated Zim election and the media's role leading up to this point. Peter, good to be chatting to you. Hello, how is the mood like in Zimbabwe?
A very good morning to you, Bongi. Thanks so much for crossing to us. Yeah, it's a breezy Sunday morning. The sun is out, and this is the day that people get their last opportunity to think through what they're going to do tomorrow. It's being dubbed the most anticipated elections since independence, partly because Robert Mugabe is not on the ballot box amongst the 23 other hopefuls that will be running for president in the harmonized elections taking place tomorrow. Yesterday they had their final rallies, important messages made by both leaders of ZANU-PF and the MDC alliance, seen largely as the two main front runners. But today, a normal tradition for Zimbabweans is to go out and get the Sunday newspapers to see what's on the headlines. And we're going to take a look at those, and as you said, helping me to talk through the media and also some of the political issues is our SABC foreign editor, Sophie Mkwena. Sophie, thanks for joining us.
Morning, Peter. Morning.
And also Dr. Pedzisai Ruhanya, who's an analyst attached to the University of Johannesburg, but you're back home as well. Morning to you.
Good morning, and thanks for inviting me.
All right, let me start with you, Sophie. Sunday papers are out. and it's a mix between the the private media and the publicly owned newspapers. Your take on what we're seeing?
Well, when you look at newspapers, let me start with the Sunday Times. You can see that true to the South African culture, you have a newspaper that took a decision to ensure that it's fairly balanced in terms of their coverage with the front page. You have both the MDC and ZANU-PF supporters, and the headline itself, Zimbabwe's historic election. It doesn't say anything about any leader or any party. It's a straightforward headline that speaks to the fact that people will decide, and you have ordinary people in the front page. You look at the Zimbabwe Independent, it's a do or die from Mnangagwa. You have the picture of the president, Mnangagwa, and Nelson Chamisa, but the headline there speaks to what Mnangagwa said, but it doesn't really speak to what Nelson Chamisa said. You go to another newspaper, the Sunday Mail, something special brewing, ED, also only about the current president. At least inside, Zimbabwe decides. It speaks to people, ordinary people are going to decide, of course. And then the Gazette, you have business, it's more business inclined, and it speaks to the aspirations of business community. They want a better economy. You go to the Daily News, very balanced, all the candidates, main candidates in the front page. And then, of course, you go to the Standard, more of MDC, because Chamisa eclipses ED. When you read this, when you are in South Africa, or you are somewhere in the world, or in passing, oh, elections are over. Chamisa has won.
All right.
So, different ways of telling the story.
All right. So, Dr. Ruhanya, looking at the mix between the public and private media, this doesn't surprise you?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, but what we expect from the newspapers or from the media is at least to tell the truth. The truth is what should bind them. But I'm not surprised with how the state media, which is supposed to be a public media, which addresses the public interest, are covering the incumbent president, because they have not been showing a public interest view where all political parties have a say or are covered equally. But also, if you look at the Daily News, I think it puts the pictures of all political contestants, which I think is fair. Everyone has a chance to see who is contesting and who is not contesting. So I think the Daily News is being fair. What the newspapers should do is simply to tell the people the truth and nothing but the truth.
All right, so what's fascinating to me now, the public broadcaster, the SABC, was on air last night, and I sampled it. I watched for a full hour their main news bulletin at 8 o'clock. So 60 minutes, they had a special one. For 60 minutes, they showed the opposition parties, all of them, that they could cover for less than 15 minutes. ZANU-PF got 40 minutes coverage. The main opposition party, the MDC Alliance, the Nelson Chamisa, got 2.5 minutes in an hour's coverage. This is something that must be quite alarming.
It is not alarming, because Zimbabweans are used to it. The ZBC is supposed to be a public broadcaster. And because it is supposed to be a public broadcaster like SABC, it must reflect the diversity of our people, the diversity of political contestants, and it must serve the national interest. But one area in the Zimbabwe political contestation that has been seriously contested is the media, particularly the public media, that it is captured, that it acts like a propaganda mouthpiece for the ruling party, and that is reflected in the manner in which they put across the public views, how they cover the political parties. In fact, 95% of ZBC coverage is for the ruling party and its presidential candidate, President Mnangagwa, against the opposition and its diversity.
All right. Sophie, how do we manage this kind of thing in South Africa?
Well, let's talk about yesterday in particular. Yesterday, you have a situation where you have two main parties. Both, you have to cover the events. You are here, you don't have enough resources. What do? You think on your feet. You have to think very, very fast. What am I going to do? What we did, We did the ZANU-PF rally and immediately dashed to MDC rally. But with a public broadcaster in that particular country, what you have to do, this is how we normally do it. We engage all political parties. For example, 2016, for the first time during the local government election, you had a political party taking the ruling party head on in terms of the final rally. Same day. What did we do? We spoke to both parties, we indicated our dilemma, and we brought to their attention that we want to cover both parties. Therefore, one party must take the morning session, the other party must take the afternoon session. We finally agreed. The African National Congress was going to start and the EFF was going to be in the afternoon. We had our resources in both rallies. As soon as the then president of the ANC was done, President Zuma, Malema walked to the stadium and we started with the EFF rally. Engage the political parties. They are institutions and they are human beings also who are leading those parties. And when you engage them, you always find solutions. But the reality is with politicians, at times it's very difficult, but sometimes you are able to get it right when you engage them. And that's what we did. And I think with ZBC, they could have done the same. You know, speak to different parties, indicate your challenge, and try to engage them to ensure that you are able to cover the elections in a much better way. And two, I think they will have to change the Broadcasting Act, you know, to arrive at a situation where they will be able to do the work the way they are supposed to. Remember, the Broadcasting Act in Zimbabwe is quite different from South Africa.
All right. I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to try and move this on a little bit, because tomorrow they have to make up their minds, Zimbabweans, and decide who they're going to vote for. They may or may not have been influenced by the media, but what was interesting for me is when I listened to both speeches yesterday, they were talking about the same thing. They were talking about new Zimbabwe, change, and so on and so forth. And I just wonder, from listening to their speeches, Dr. Ruhanya, who was more convincing that might swing the vote in their favor?
You see, the general feeling in the country, it appears there's an organic movement for change. Usually when you enter into the political terrain such as we are in Zimbabwe, where you have a lot of excitement, where people are ready to go for election, usually people are not excited to go and restore an incumbent regime. So this kind of excitement is like the excitement in 1994 during the South African first election, or Zimbabwe's first elections in 1980. People are not interested, or people are not excited to restore an incumbent. Usually when we have this kind of environment, it's an environment for change, it's an environment for new things. So what we are likely to do, if people were going to vote in huge numbers, we can actually see a fundamental change in the political economy of the state.
Right. So, see, your assessment of yesterday's speeches?
Well, of course, the message is the same because the challenges are the same. One, the main issue, the economic challenge. How are you going to address the economic challenges? And both leaders are trying very hard to convince the voters that they have a plan. That is why I'm saying the message is similar. Secondly, you have an incumbent who is saying, I have experience. But the question is, some are saying, do you have credibility? You have another candidate, Chamisa, saying, I have a plan to deal with the challenges facing the country. Some are saying, yes, you are new, you don't have experience. Others are saying, we want a new person. Perhaps you will come up with better solutions. So it's very difficult.
All right. So tomorrow they go to the polls. The pollsters, whether we believe them or not, they're saying that it's very close and that there's a 20% grouping that either didn't want to say who they were going to vote for or were undecided. And when they show up, they're really going to be the ones that decide what the outcome is. I wonder, Dr. Ruhanya, for Zimbabwe to move forward, what might be the best result in your view?
The best result for me, and given the political and economic decomposition of the state for the past 13 years, is a change result. To see something else, to experience something different, and if those who will be elected after 3rd July, if they fail to manage the affairs of the state, when we go to another election, Zimbabweans must have a culture of changing leaders, changing government when they fail to meet their mandate. But also, when the incumbent president talks about a new dispensation, and we have captured a media like we have, there's nothing new about what is happening. But also in terms of the policy, like they were talking yesterday, the change message that the incumbent is talking about has been the message of the opposition since 2000. So the incumbent is actually speaking like an opposition leader when he has been in power or in government or in the state since 1980.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and that's where we're going to have to leave it. Sophie Mkena, Dr. Pedro Hanya, thank you very much indeed, both of you, for your insights, and thank you for tuning in for this segment of Media Monitor. But we'll have more coverage for you throughout the course of the day from Zimbabwe on the eve of those historic elections. From us, goodbye.
Thank you very much, Peter. Make us proud there as the SABC. Of course, it's a big day tomorrow for Zimbabwe. I didn't hear the issues of voters' roll, which has been an issue in Zimbabwe, the issue of electoral reform as well, and media freedom. But you do get a sense that Tshamano, that things are changing now.
No,
there's a breath of fresh air that is just
definitely
permeating the country.
Yeah, no, definitely. You get the sense that things are changing. I mean, on the eve of these elections, we haven't really heard of any dramatic things happening in the streets of Zimbabwe. Almost I would say a bit calm than what you would expect, especially with big elections like this. But maybe just to touch briefly, Bongi, on the on how the story is told. I mean, if you listen to what Sophie was saying, I mean, most of the headlines, you sort of get the sense that especially in Zimbabwe, and I'm not talking about just overall, but most of the headlines, they seem to be leaning towards a particular political organization. So in as much as you expect so and so to be, I mean, to win the election, but I think media must always tell stories in a way that they are fair, stories are balanced.
But Tandi, are you getting that sense now that the Zimbabwean and the media there is really free, and the role that the media played in informing Zimbabweans about these elections?
I don't think so. I think that you've got elements of free media. I think you've got elements of media reporting balanced and unbiased coverage and things like that. But when you have the public broadcaster, or it's supposed to be the public broadcaster, still displaying state broadcaster like tendencies with the sort of coverage that gets given, that is a problem. Okay. And yeah, I think just to point out that we need to be watching what happens after the election.
All right.
That's important.
I think that's where we're going to have to leave it. I was hoping to hear your views on some of the top stories that are coming this week, but unfortunately we've run out of time. Thank you very much for coming through. Tandi Smith, Media Monitoring Africa, and Tshamano Makhadi is a media analyst. And that's us for today. Thank you very much for watching our show, Media Monitor. We hope that you will join us again, same time and same place next week. From me and rest of the team and my guests, it's a good day to you.